Ever wondered how to win that big case while maintaining a strong sense of financial stability and without burning yourself out? Today, we're embarking on a journey to provide answers to those questions, talking with one of California's top trial attorneys. Welcome to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast, where we empower law firm owners to create wealth and secure their financial legacies. I'm Darren Wurz, your host and financial planner for law firm owners. Our guest today is Mike Alder, trial attorney and owner of Alder Law. Mike has an unmatched track record of securing staggering verdicts and settlements over a career spanning 3 decades. He's a strategic powerhouse in the courtroom, a mentor to emerging lawyers, and a philanthropist at heart. Mike, welcome to the show.
You know, with introductions like that, I'll come over and over and over again. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with learning a little bit about your background and how you got started in the field of law. Before we got on, you were telling me that your dad was a traveling preacher. So I'm very curious how you ended up as a lawyer.
Well, yeah, my dad just passed away in COVID in 2020, 83. My mom a while ago, and they actually met at a Bible college in Tupelo, Mississippi, where my dad was studying to be a minister and my mom was studying to be a minister's wife. I mean, back then she's like, her daddy gave her 2 options. You could be a nurse or a wife. But yeah, when I was born, my parents were basically traveling preachers who tried to live off of offerings and couldn't do it. So ultimately became teachers. Mm-hmm. And my dad remained a part-time preacher until he retired from teaching and then went back to preaching. And ultimately moved to Louisiana when I was very young because that's where my mom was from. And that's my home. I mean, that's where I grew up. That's where I went to school. I went to elementary, junior high, high school, college at LSU Law. I'm licensed there, and we have a big ranch, Zia Ranch, in about 10 minutes from where I grew up. And I like to say that I'm a part-time rancher and part-time lawyer. So, you know,
yeah,
it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's so much fun to bring people from LA to Louisiana, especially if they've never even been to the South before, much less to the country, because it's out in the country. We got animals and we got barns and we got chickens.
Yeah.
And
those are different worlds for sure.
Well, but it's really not that far away. It's about the same length of time it takes to drive to San Diego, right? So it's really not that bad. But you see people, and we bring tons of people there all the time. You see people just kind of breathe and open up, and their kids run through the field and they're all stressed out about what. I'm like, your kid, nothing's going to happen. I mean, nobody's going to get that kid. Don't worry. And as opposed to here where you're like, you know, handing your kid the AK-47 on their way out the door. But
oh, wow.
And I that's actually not true. But
right.
Anyway, I don't know how, but that's kind of where I grew up. And my dad and mom being, I guess I would call them God-fearing people. You know, after my rebellious time, and these were Pentecostal preachers. If you know Christianity, Pentecostal, you know, it's pretty fire and brimstone. Turned me off. You know, I was like, but now as I've, you know, matured, I have kids, I realize that many of the lessons that are part of the church experience, in the good parts of the church experience, I took to heart, and has really helped me in my life and in my business. And the idea of caring and about giving unconditionally and really legitimately giving a shit about people, and expecting that you should treat people the way you want to be treated. I mean, all those are, you know, kind of universal, but biblical as well. And
well, let's
I,
get,
I believe it.
yeah, definitely. Well, what was it that drew you to the practice of law? You went to LSU and graduated from there. What got you into the legal field to begin with?
Do you want the truth or do you want the made up story?
Give me the truth.
Because I'd like to tell you, I got pulled over when I was 4, and it talked me. I said this is unfair. I don't have any story like that, right? I was in a fraternity at LSU as an 18-year-old and drunk on the front lawn of my fraternity on a block party, and a woman came by and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I'd kind of like to have another beer. What do you want to do?" And she's like, "I'm going to be going to law school. I'm going to move to Los Angeles and I'm going to be an entertainment lawyer." And I'm like, got married to her a year later and kind of by default went to law school. I mean, I know that's not a very, sexy, great story, but sure enough, got married when I was 19, went through law school with her. She was very, very successful in law school. In my giving nature, I gave the top 50% of my class help. So then we clerked for a year in Mississippi, her for a federal appeals court. I've clerked for the Mississippi Supreme Court, and we moved to LA. And she
Okay.
became an entertainment lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 kids. She retired. We got divorced. I got remarried, and throughout that whole time, after working for 2 really phenomenal trial lawyers for about 7 years, I then opened my own practice.
Okay.
Probably
Okay.
because I got fired, and I think I got fired, or maybe I quit. I'm not really sure, but I started my practice because I didn't have a job.
Okay. Okay. So it was kind of a necessity then. That must have been a difficult moment for you to kind of launch out on your own. You probably weren't planning on doing that. Tell us about that
No,
experience.
I'm a big life skills, life plan kind of person, especially now. But way back when, I mean, I literally, I had learned a lot from my mentor, and a guy named Michael Hughes, who passed away a couple of years ago, but who has been a mentor to really many of the top trial lawyers in Los Angeles. I mean, many of the people that have won trial lawyer of the year, we've all gone through Mike Hughes. Genius,
Okay.
but hard to work for, right? So after about 3 or 4 years, most of us, we kind of learned trial by fire, and then it's like, okay, what am I going to do? And that's kind of where I was. So it wasn't like out of the blue that I wasn't planning it. If I had my druthers, I would plan to have more cases. So when I kind of started my firm, working out of my house, and I had 1 case. Now, I was married at the time to a busy entertainment lawyer, so it wasn't financially catastrophic, right?
Sure.
I mean, I wasn't making that much money anyway, but it allowed me to really kind of put the word out that I have some trial experience, but I will try anything that moves. I will take any case that has a pulse. And I built my practice that way. And I found my old first tax return in 2000. I lost $56,000. So
Yeah. What a testament. So, I mean, what would you credit your success to, having gone from, starting out very humbly like that to having such great wins? What's been the key factor for you that's allowed you to, come to where you are today?
Well, I paid attention, first of all. And I had a healthy dose of I'm not all that in a bag of chips, right? There is no substitute for being around excellence. There's no ego that should be so big that you're not willing to take help. And so I'm a big believer in being around people that are bigger, better, stronger, faster, richer than I am, right? And I am, and I was. And when I was less experienced, notice I didn't say younger, right? Because I'm a positive talker. When I was less experienced, I worshiped the ground that Mike Hughes walked on. I mean, he's like, bring me coffee, boy. And I'm like, can I bring you two? Right. I mean, I was like, and so I see, I just gave a speech to Pepperdine law students a couple of days ago. And the primary question is, how do I become a multimillionaire in the next week or two? Right. How do I become the trial lawyer of the year in a year? And you realize that there is no substitute for practice and practice and practice and practice and hard work and stepping outside your comfort zone and willing to fail. And I had that, right? And I certainly I have an ego, and believe me, talk to my wife, she's like, you don't have an ego? Get the hell out of here. But at the same time, I can also have moments of lucidity where I'm like, okay, you know what? It ain't all that, right? And when you do that, many times when you're open to learning more. And like, I'm going to a seminar next week that in the past I probably would be a speaker at. I'm speaking at a bunch of them, but I'm going with really good trial lawyers that are teaching. And I'm very much looking forward to it, because I realize that I will never know everything I need to know, and I never will stop learning. And exposing myself to different techniques and strategies is a constant that will never end. And it's a beautiful thing. And so I think that openness to stealing good things, mirroring good things, not having too healthy dose of I've got to be number one all the time, has really benefited me and benefited my clients. And, it's a good way to live, I think.
Yeah, certainly. And that was actually a question I was going to ask you a little bit later on, but we can dive into it now. I was curious, with the success that you've had, I mean, success often can be dangerous. How do you stay grounded? How do you keep yourself grounded and continue to have the right mindset going forward?
Well, it's changed over time. And, I have some people question my willingness to be transparent, but I feel like it's a very important part of teaching and about communicating. Is I wasn't grounded all the time, right? I tell you about moving out here, being married, and then starting my own practice. And then, 3 years later, I went trial lawyer of the year. I'm like in my mid-30s. I'm like, and all of a sudden, all these cases come, and then I start winning 8-figure verdicts. Then I cross $1 billion worth of recoveries, and I'm like, and I'm all that in a bag of chips. And then my marriage fell apart. And you say, how do you stay grounded? I had 2 young kids, and I didn't stay grounded. I over the next several years kind of lost my way. Now, in my business, I was always keeping it. In my personal life, I wasn't grounded. I was eating too much, drinking too much, partying too much, getting into trouble. Thank God I was at an era where I remember Len Bias. You probably don't remember a basketball player back in the 80s who was the #1 draft pick and took cocaine for the first time the night of the draft and died of a heart attack. Well,
wow.
Thank God I said, if I take drugs, I die. And I just never, but alcohol was a big part of socialization. And I, in a wonderful blessing, kind of hit some skids personally. And I say it's a blessing because I don't know too many successful people that I respect who haven't been through something similar. And the reason that they are a success. The reason why they are grounded is because there was a time when they weren't. And you learn, and I learned, and I worked, and I read, and I studied, and I failed, and it's a constant recalibration to be grounded. But I've learned the skills, I've learned the techniques, and I follow them, and I've made them positive habits and routines, and that keeps you. I was in this month-long trial in San Francisco, and I delete my social media when I'm in trial. I go to bed by 7 p.m. I wake up at 4. I work out. I meditate. I eat right. I don't drink coffee after a certain time. I turn off all TVs and whatever before an hour before. And people are like, God, that's so boring. And I'm like, you know what? The first week, we're all on both sides. But week 3, I'm still cranking.
Yeah.
And they're like, by week 4, they look like shit, right? But I'm like the same. And that's just a learned skill that requires choices, right? I mean, yeah, you go to bed at 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You're not out FOMOing at the party where you're going to meet so-and-so, which you probably never do, right? But you have this feeling of being left out. I got over it.
Yeah.
I got over it. And I found a woman that I'm madly in love with, who I have children with, and that we work and live together, and it's beautiful.
That's wonderful. And I love that that message that failure is such a critical part of success and a part of the journey. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and with our audience. And what you mentioned there at the end is a great segue into the next topic I want to kind of dive into a little bit, which is some of your tips and strategy as a trial lawyer. You mentioned some of the things you do in your routine. What are there other things you do in preparing for a court process, a court appearance? Do you have like a ritual or process that you go through that you found to be effective? Okay.
I don't know if this is a shameless plug or just a plug, but I have a YouTube channel, Alder Talk, that I ask people to subscribe to. And I have over the years, especially during the COVID times, where so many young lawyers have asked me questions like this, right? And I've mentored a lot of people because, again, that's how I grew up. I mean, I just thought that's what you do. But I then would record sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 minute videos on how to do this in litigation. This is the strategy, and also life skills. And so one thing I would say is everything that I'm talking about, there are different videos on my Alder Talk channel, YouTube channel that anecdotally people say that help them, and I think it does. But you learn. I remember you learn skills of trial, right? Of course, being funny and quick on your feet and gregarious and whatever is great. But so much about trial is knowing evidence. It's about organizing yourself, about being able to control your heartbeat, right? Heartbeat control is the most important factor, because imagine you ask a question and the witness doesn't give you the answer you were expecting, and you have all your other questions based on them saying this, but they just said that, or that the judge doesn't let that evidence in, and you're like, wait, I have to have that evidence in to talk, and I don't have any other prepared questions. And if your heartbeat elevates, your brain shuts off, right? And that ability to control your heartbeat is primarily a function of experience and practice. But there's other ways to make sure that you control your heartbeat, and that's by organizing your trial notebook with an understanding of being able to get something in 5 seconds or less. I have a 5-second rule, right? If I can't find that piece of evidence, that depo page and line in 5 seconds or less, I'm probably better off just skipping over it. And so knowing that, I remember as a plaintiff's lawyer carrying the luggage for my mentor 30 years ago, a defense lawyer who's now a friend of mine, who's probably 30 years older than I saw his trial notebook, and he had like loose leaf paper, and he would ask a question, he'd flip the page over or strike it through, and he was very generous. And I learned how he organized his trial notebooks, and I do the same. And so not only do I have my depot summary and my depot, and I have a note, loose leaf paper to make notes, I write topics, questions, or ideas on a single sheet of paper, and then I can use them as I'm preparing my examination or my cross-examination by moving them around or whatever. If you're in trial and you hear something in opening, I'll make a note and I'll put it in the section for that witness. And so when I have a witness, direct or cross, and I open my trial notebook, I have not only all my points that if I need to skip over some, I can, but I also have my depot summary. I also have, if I know that I'm going to read a depot, or potentially I will have on another sheet the language and the page and line. If I have exhibits that I know I'm going to want to talk about, even though they may be in other parts of notebooks, I have another copy there. Again, with all of the idea that I need this information in 5 seconds or less.
Yeah.
That's how I keep the flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I might pause for more than 5 seconds before I ask a question, but I got that document in my hand, right? I might like, you said da-da-da, but I want to show you this,
strategically.
But the whole point is that, if you ever been in trial, or if you ever been anywhere, and a politician who's struggling to find the next word or the next thing, you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if jurors are comfortable with you, and then of course if they trust you, and then they're willing to open up and listen to what you say. And so all of that is strategic, but it's all learned things that I teach all the lawyers here. I teach anybody whoever asked me for it. And so
great tips. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I'm also curious about mindset and how what role that plays in the work that you do, and how you cultivate a winning mindset when you're, going into these kind of procedures.
Sure. Well, I have a number of things that I believe in. One, how you talk affects how you think, which affects how you act. Right. And so earlier, I said somebody who's younger than me, and I'm like, you know what? No, I used to say things like, well, you don't remember back when this happened, because insinuating that you're young and I'm old, or you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I get that people want to be ingratiating and whatever, but that is negative talk. It is, I'm old, right? I'm not old. I'm just whatever I am. And I know that positive talk, that and instead of but, that it's, I get to do this, not I have to do this, right? Not that it's hard, it's worth it, right? Not that it's an obstacle, it's a challenge. Just that simple change in language elevates how you think, which elevates how you act. And it's a process, right? My wife, Gina, and I really kind of challenged each other to correct our language. And the first time we did it, I thought we were going to get a divorce, right? It's like, she's like, stop telling me to change. And she was doing the same thing, because you don't realize how I try. I really need to do that. Oh, you know what? I should eat that too. All of those things are potential change in language makes it positive, right? we say should do this, and then we don't do it, and then we feel like crap about it.
Yeah.
Instead, how about saying, I've chosen not to do that.
Yeah.
I have chosen to eat hamburgers every day. When you own it and you really don't want to eat hamburgers every day, it's a hell of a lot easier than if you are like castigating yourself at the end of I shouldn't eat that hamburger. How about, I ate that hamburger and I actually intentionally did it. And now I feel like crap. Now it's a lot easier to say, okay, I ain't going to make that choice again. So I think language is a huge part of mindset.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Great insight there, Mike.
Yeah.
We're coming close to the end of our time here. So I want to ask you about, the future for you and for your practice and what that looks like.
I'm always branching out. I've been a personal injury trial lawyer for 30 years. And then about 10 years ago, after having a lot of success in trying PI cases, somebody said, hey, you want to try an employment case? And I now tried a bunch of those and I love them. And so I have a thriving employment practice as well. And then a year and a half ago, I got approached to step in to first chair a toxic tort trial in San Francisco, a whole groundwater contamination thing, and got a huge verdict in the first one. And I just finished another one. We won that case. And now I'm a toxic tort lawyer as well. But all of these are, they're all different challenges, different kinds of trials, but they're all also trials that require the same type of skills. So, once you learn the vernacular and the vocabulary, I'm good at it because I've done it a lot, right? And I practice and I practice and I practice. And if you do that, if anybody does that for a length of time, they become a lot better at it. I mean, it's just the way it is. And then 3 years ago, my wife and I got remarried. She's a lawyer, and we started a separate workers' comp firm called ZA Lawyers. And that's been really amazing. And it's provided not only other income, but it's also opened me up to meeting a lot of new people. I do the third party crossover cases from comp. I mean, it's a great segue. And then we bought this building that we're in COVID, gutted it, used the remote work to basically gut it. And I live a mile away from here. So, it's a wonderful situation. So
that's a great setup. And seeking out new challenges. That's awesome. I love to hear that.
Obstacles are not in the way.
Right.
Obstacles are the way. And I'm a firm believer of that. And that ability to change how you think about challenges and obstacles.
For sure.
Well, if it was easy, competition would be fierce.
Yeah, everyone would do it.
Thank God it's hard, right? The reason it's hard is why we have the ability to be so successful.
For sure. Well, Mike, I got one last question for you here. Yep. And that is, what is your millionaire mission? And what I mean by that is, what's your big purpose or overarching why for behind what you do?
Well, financially, it has changed quite a bit, right? When I was younger, I really wanted to make a lot of money, but made sure that I made more money than anybody else that I knew, right? Which now, looking back, seems silly to me. But life is a journey. So I enjoy my work tremendously. And I, of course, want to make a lot of money. But first, I want to make enough money to really be able to live the way my family wants to live. Anything on top of that is gravy, right? And so that's kind of my underlying premise. We have things that, we have a ranch in Louisiana. We have stuff here. We have things that we pay for, a way that we live. That's what I want to make enough money to do and continue. Yeah. And then we give a lot of money away. I mean, we are in philanthropic situations. And, my wife, who's Latina, says, the Latino community is kind of programmed not to make a lot of money. Like, if you make a lot of money, you're a sellout. And she's like, hell no. If you make a lot of money, you can make systemic change with that money. And we're both on that bandwagon. So we work hard to make money, not just so that we can spend it. And
yeah.
it's a good way to live.
Absolutely. To make a difference in the world, for sure. Well, Mike, it's been great chatting with you, and you've had some great advice to share. If people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
So my cell number, 310-710-3345. My email, C is in Charles, M is in Mike, cmalder@alderlaw.com. I already talked about subscribing to my YouTube channel, Alder Talk, and you can find me on Instagram at mike.alder. And I'll say that you smiled when I gave my cell number.
I did.
And I give my cell number to everybody. I just did to this law school class. And then some people go, good Lord, are you nuts? You must be inundated with calls and texts and what. And I've learned that 95% of well-intentioned people actually never follow through. And so I'm not inundated. I encourage people to reach out, to text, to call, to do whatever, because if you do, I can help you. And you just got to pull the trigger and step outside that comfort zone and execute. And so that's why I provide it.
Very cool.
So,
all right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Mike. It's been great having you here. And I want to thank our listeners, too, for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd subscribe and leave us a review. We appreciate your support. Remember, change starts with you, and every small step can shape the trajectory of your financial future. For additional resources or to learn more about how we empower law firm owners to financial success, please visit theLawyerMillionaire.com. I'm your host, Darren Wurz, wishing you a week of productivity and prosperity. I can't wait to meet you back here for our next episode. Until then, take care and keep striving toward your goals.